back if there's any additional support that you need. So, it's great to see you all here this evening. When you booked your ticket, we asked you to let us know what question you wanted us to ask, and whether you wanted to ask it yourself. Loads of you had questions, more than we had time to get through. So we looked to see what questions and themes were the most popular, and we've already let people know if their question has been chosen. So if you haven't had an email from us, you can sit back and you can relax. And we hope that for most of you, even if your exact question wasn't chosen, you'll find that we are covering the areas that you told us were important to you. So we had over 20 questions, and we picked the ones that we thought best reflected the most popular themes. And I'll tell you a bit about our campaign, which we first started for Women and Girls' Voices to be heard, listened to, and included during the mayoral elections in 2024. We asked all the mayoral candidates at that time and all the local authorities in the combined authority area to sign up to our pledges, which you can see. They're on the screen. Not all of you might be able to see that. We've got them on the screen. But also you can go to our website, www.1millionwomenandgirls.org. You've all got a leaflet on your seat, and contact social media is on there. These were pledges for Sunderland, Newcastle and North Tyneside, and the councillors here in Gateshead also signed up to the pledges, which was great at the time. At the end of the debate this evening, our panel chair will ask each candidate if they're prepared to sign up to those same pledges and commit to working with us in the future on these issues. So if you have any questions about the campaign, just ask any of us wearing these delightful t-shirts, 1 Million Women and Girls t-shirts. And if you'd like to get involved in the future, or you just want to join our mailing list, you can sign up or get in touch on our website. Details, like I said, are also on the leaflets on your chair, and you can go to the front desk if you've got any questions. So, without further ado, let's get on with the debate. It's my great pleasure to introduce our fantastic chair for this event, Jackie Hodgson. Jackie's an experienced senior journalist at the BBC, and we're delighted that she's going to be chairing our debate tonight. So over to you, Jackie. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and good evening, everybody. What a brilliant way to spend such a sunny evening. So I hope you all brought your pins or whatever to get you tonight. So, I hope you can hear me all right. Before we get started, I thought it would be helpful for those of you who maybe aren't completely steeped in local elections and Gateshead politics, for me to give you a little bit of background just about Gateshead and then about our time together here tonight. So, a few facts about Gateshead. There are 66 seats up for grabs on the council, and that's because local ward boundary changes, mean the makeup of the whole council, will be decided on May 7th. So if you're good at maths, you can work out that to have control of the council, a single party needs to win 34 seats. So that's what everybody will be fighting over. Currently, the council is made up of 46 Labour members, 18 Liberal Democrats and 2 independents. And the council has been Labour controlled for the last 52 years, quite a long time. There are lots of local issues which you've probably seen garnering a few headlines. Council tax rise set at 4.99%, 2% of which is ring-fenced for adult social care, and warnings of a financial black hole, reportedly more than £20 million over the next financial year. Big challenges, but obviously what we're here to do tonight is to talk about the questions that you want answering. So it may not be the big issues, but it will be the issues that you said are important to you. I'm really delighted that these 4 people have agreed to put their heads above the parapet and debate tonight. And in a minute, I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves and just say a little bit about why they're standing. There is, however, one absence, and unfortunately, although 1 million more women and girls did start inviting parties back in February, and have worked really, really hard to reach out to organisers and candidates. We heard yesterday that Reform UK are not joining us tonight. As your independent chair, it's not my job to speak for any one party. However, I think it will help debate if I can point to policies or plans that Reform UK have put into the public domain which are relevant to your questions. I will state them as a matter of fact and tell you where the information came from. So, finally, this is the last and quite serious point. I want tonight to be informative and insightful and, dare I say, fun. To that end, we're asking that everybody, audience and panel, abides by the Joe Cox Civility Code. That code asks you to be civil, constructive and respectful of those you disagree with, however passionately you disagree. Feel free, however, to applaud, to giggle, to cheer, whatever you fancy, provided you can do it respectfully. So, I'm going to get cracking. So I'd ask each of the candidates to speak for 2 minutes to say who they are and why they're standing. To be absolutely fair, we're going to do it in strict alphabetical order, starting with Rachel from the Green Party.
Hi, can you hear me? Yes. Hello, I'm Rachel Brown, I'm from the Green Party. I've lived in Gateshead for 40 years, that's all of my adult life. I brought up my 3 children here and my 2 stepchildren here. Most of that time I've lived in Bensham, but I've had a short time in Lowell and I'm currently living in Sheriff Hill. I have a daughter. I've got 2 mothers because I was my stepmother and my mother had shared care of me. I've got 4 sisters, I've got aunties, I've got nieces. I'm soon to have a grandbaby. I'm Catholic, basically, and I know women, so obviously I'm a woman as well. But I will be talking a little bit about boys tonight as well, and I have 4 sons, so I think we need to include boys a little bit in our discussion. Personally, I've been in politics since I was 18 in various parties. I used to live in Crosby, so Shirley Williams was my MP, so I started completely inspired by Shirley Williams when I was in the SDP. And then I switched to Labour, but 10 years ago I switched to the Green Party. The reason I went to the Green, I met a Lib Dem recently at a conference, sorry Amanda, and he said, I've been a Green all my life, I didn't know it until this week. When you walk into a room of Greens, you walk into a room of friends, people who are professional and come across, live across all walks of life, and are compassionate, and they listen, and I think that's really important. That's what we can give you. If you give us a chance in Gateshead, we will listen to you, as we listen to everyone.
Next up, Barry Foots from the Conservative Party. Well done, Barry, for evening out the sexes on the platform a little bit.
Yeah, I don't quite know how to. Do forgive me, this is my first hustings I've done for 9 years, I think. I did quite a lot in 2010, and I just thought back, and that's 16 years ago. And I thought I was young and nervous then, I'm just old and nervous now, middle-aged and nervous now. But thank you for inviting me to put our platform forward and talk about ourselves. My name is Barry Foots. I was a councillor in Northumberland from 2013 to 2025, and I have recently moved to Gateshead. I now live in the Car Hill area, and I'm running in Deccan where I live. I'm very much doing a campaign based on my record and based on what I think I can do as an individual. I feel that my time as a councillor was productive. I was always pleased when you saw results, whether that's making things more green, whether that's making roads safer, whether that is campaigning for a bridge over railways to open. Small things like that can make a very difference to everyone's lives. And I like to think that if I was elected to as a councillor in May, that I would bring that kind of efforts forward. Casework, no matter how micro, is so important. I always remember dealing with issues around social housing, including issues around domestic violence, And it did sometimes shock me, some of the responses that we got from social landlords in terms of fixing broken windows, for example, where people could put their hand in and turn a knob on the door. Quite frightening, really. I am just one of 14 Conservative candidates running in these local elections, so unfortunately we cannot take the council even if every single one of us was elected. But that said, if you vote for a Conservative in Gateshead and they get elected, I think you can ensure that you'd have a good scrutiny voice on the council. I stand on, as I say, I stand where I feel my record was in Northumberland. I feel Northumberland is a better place. I just finished, retired being councillor in that area. So when I started, I felt my own area of Cramlington was particularly. But it's really important that your councillors are visible and your councillors are active and don't shy away from the difficult work, which is often the micro work, right on the ground floor, right on the street, because those policies of doing little things are things that make a difference in everyday life. You've got a budget of over £1 billion as the council. There's only so much we as politicians can do without government grant, and what we can do, the amount of council tax, so the amount of physical things that you can do to a massive extent from one place to another is reasonably limited on the basis of what councils get from central government and their grant. But have a think on when you get to your ballot paper, which candidates are going to make a difference, which ones are going to work hard. And I think that's where you need to make a decision. And I'd like to think that if you elected me a councillor in Deckham, I would do as good a job as I could.
Thank you very much, Barry. Next up on the alphabetical list is Councillor Sharon Potts for Labour Party.
Hello everybody. Oh, am I on? Yeah? No, I don't. Hi. I'm really nervous, and if you know us, you'd find that hard to believe. This is my first husband, but I don't know why I'm nervous, because I'm not normally nervous at all. Maybe I should have had wine over on the table instead of water when I first came in. But anyway, how did I get involved was quite virtually by accident. Where I live, at Youth, they were closing the roundabout, and at the time my father had cancer. So where I lived in Below, we had to drive all the way around through Heaven to get to the Kiwi Hospital, and I had to drive all the way back round through Heaven. And I just thought, I'm not having this, I'm holding a meeting. So I organised a meeting, and then at that meeting I ended up chairing the meeting. And then I thought, do you know what it is? I'm going to sign up and I'm going to be a Labour candidate because I wanted to have a say. And it is a Labour-held council at the minute, and I thought that's the only way I am going to have a say. And when I started, a lot of colleagues said to me, my best advice to you is to sit back, say nothing, and for your first year, absorb everything. But, like I say, if you know me, I don't know how to keep my mouth shut. So if I've got something to say, I will say it. And I think the only way you get things done is by opening your mouth and saying things. And at the end of the day, I won by, I think, 76% majority, because everybody in my community knows us, because I pound the streets with our local Little Pekin group, and I've run our neighbourhood watch for 15 years now. So I've got a good working relationship with police, and I virtually know everybody in the community because I'm out Little Pekin every day. And like I say, I was elected to represent the people, so if I've got something to say, or if my residents have got something to say, I will speak up on their behalf. I'm 55 years old, I've lived in my ward all of my life, hence how everybody knows us. I'm chair of governors in one of our local schools, and also governor in one of the other schools. So I've got a good working relationship with the schools and the education system within the schools itself. I don't really know what much else to tell you, apart from I'll go into a lot more detail when your questions come up. But thank you everybody for coming to support us today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, last but definitely not least, Councillor Amanda Witcher for the Liberal Democrats.
I'm also quite nervous, as I've never done one of these before, but I guess I'll start by saying, obviously, I did not grow up here. I've lived in Gateshead for about 17 years now. I ended up here because I came to Durham to study and ended up meeting a guy, much to my mother's unhappiness, but so I've lived here at Gateshead since then. I came to study archaeology, so normally when I'm not doing counselor stuff, I'll be off digging a hole somewhere. You might find me in Jarrow, because I sometimes volunteer at the museum down there. But I always hated politics. I didn't like arguing with people. I don't like conflict. I've always been naturally introverted and quiet. But part of that was after 2016, various things that happened in 2016, both here and in the US where I'm from, I spent a lot of time doom scrolling on Twitter. I'm seeing all the horrible things that are happening, and I'm feeling extremely depressed until I came across somebody who challenged you to, well, don't just doom scroll, do something about it. I thought, well, there's not a lot I can do, but maybe I'll join a political party. And so I looked through all the various parties, I read the manifestos, and I thought, well, the Dems have most things I agree with. I think like any group of people, there's things that I don't agree with. But I've always been particularly keen on things like civil liberties and being able to run your life the way you see fit, no matter what your background is. So that's why I ended up with the Dems. Sometimes you think, why did I do that for? I think that's probably true of every party. But also, I chose to live in where we live now in Pelaw because it was convenient at the time for where I worked or where my husband worked. But also, over time, I think you notice little things that could be fixed, and things that you think, well, why don't we do something about that? Who's going to do something about that? And so I thought, well, I've been challenged to do something about it. I'll stand for council, and over time, I've gotten more involved in that. So I've been a councillor now for 4 years. And it's bizarre to think that I would ever have done something like this because it's not my nature at all. But I've also been, in that time, I've been on a number of committees, including some of the cross-community ones. I suppose you could say I was in the Joint Bridges Committee, Joint Transport Committee. I've been a substitute member on the Mayor's, Northeast Combined Authority, sorry. So I've managed to get involved in a lot of different things since I got onto the council. And over time, we think there's a lot of different things that could be done better. And I think that's part of the incremental change that I hope to bring. But also, just, I've had a lot of residents tell me, well, nobody else does anything. And I think, well, why not? Because it's not that difficult to solve your problem. So it's been quite gratifying being sort of customer service agent for the neighborhood and think, well, this person's had this problem for years. If they asked me 2 years ago, it would have been fixed already because it doesn't actually take that much to fix it. So we've done a lot of things, got a lot of things done. It's very, we'll continue to do that if we get elected again because it's very, it's satisfying to know that you can do such a small thing and make a big difference in somebody's life, and we'll continue to do that if we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's really obvious is that I'm surrounded by people here who want to get things done, which is great. So we're going to pick out some questions and see what's being done and what might be done for these particular subjects. So our first question tonight comes from Ellen Moore. Is Ellen here? Hello, Ellen. Would you like to ask a question?
Hello. Yeah. Yes, thank you for having me. My question is in relation to young people's services. So with the erosion of youth services, what more can be done to provide safe spaces for young women to socialise and form a sense of belonging?
So just in case anybody didn't hear that, it was with the erosion of youth services, what more can be done to provide safe spaces for young women to socialise and form a sense of belonging? But I'm going to start this one with Sharon, that's all right? So, Sharon, I've done a bit of homework, and between 2012 and 2023, all the years my neighbour has been in charge, spending on youth services has fallen by 75%. So what's the position now, and what can you say to Ellen to make her think that something will be different?
Over the past couple of years, we've been working on the children and young people's strategy, and it's been basically formed by the young people in our communities as well, so they've had a lot of input, what they want to do, and obviously the youth services were fantastic services when they were running, but obviously because of the cutbacks we couldn't afford to keep going with them. So we have started looking at setting up different youth services, providing grants and actually helping people apply for the grants because they are quite complicated forms to fill in. But we've also set up a Revive session as well, which is going down really well against an interchange, and that's to try and defer from antisocial behaviour. So it is focused on girls as well, but you know, like they're all going, they're doing the MC, they're doing the DJing, and it's keeping the children off the streets, especially on a Thursday. I think it's running from 5 till 7. So that's one of the things we're doing. We've also started things in Saltwell Park, trying to get things, you know, for the kids involved in Saltwell Park, getting them more involved with the park runs and things like that. So
it is true though, isn't it, that over that time you have, and I know you're going to say it's as a result of forced cuts, we've lost a lot of clubs and leisure facilities that young women might have found a space in. It's great that things are changing, but the Labour Party has presided over quite a lot of cuts.
Well, for the past 14 years, I haven't. So, unfortunately, it has been 14 years of cutbacks, and as a council, we've lost about 70% of our funding, and about 80% of our funding anyway goes on social care. So it gets to a point where you think, do you want things like the grass cut, do you want youth services, or do you want the old people looked after in the home? And that's basically the choice that we end up with. So you've got to prioritise, and unfortunately in these circumstances, that's what we've had to do. But we are looking to improve, and we're all trying to listen to everybody, and that's why young people have been involved in this strategy, young children and young people's strategy. I hope that's answered your question.
Thank you. Amanda, I found your local 100-point manifesto, which was very helpful, I have to say. And it says that you will enhance and reintroduce youth services, but it doesn't say how. We just heard about the financial constraints on the local authority. So how would you do it?
I accept that's a bit of a difficulty, but we have one member in particular, his name is Jonathan Ivey, he's a candidate in Bridges. He's been doing a lot of work in the background discussing youth service provision with youth services providers. So he's basically, I'm not sure exactly what the details that he's about, but he's got a vision for bringing in these services into Gateshead. Not necessarily, I think, funded by the council directly. I think that's one of the things that we would like to do differently is not rely on the funding so much from the council itself, but try to find other sources that would come in and sort of help boost the services. So that's one of our big things. We'd also like to be sure and boost a lot of women's groups. So we didn't necessarily break it down by young women versus women in general, but we know that there's a lot of community groups around Gateshead that include young women, include a lot of mental health provisions and that sort of thing. I personally am quite concerned about this sort of thing because I want young people to have something better to do than to go get into trouble in abandoned warehouses. I won't bring it up too much, but it was an issue in my ward, so it's definitely a thing. I've spoken a lot to community service or community safety, to the police, to try and get some, ideas or things that we could do, but we're quite keen to get something going with these services to make sure that people have someplace safe to go. We're also trying to help the skateboarders find a new place for the skate ramp. I'm not sure what the status of that is, but that's another thing we would like to do, make sure there's, fun, recreational things to do that are safe, but are still, not the sorts of things that I would find cool, but the sort of thing that an actual young person would find cool, because it lasts not young anymore. So I hope that answers it.
Unfortunately, Conservatives didn't have a 100-point manifesto that I could look to. So what I missed in terms of youth services that would answer Ellen's question.
Right, well, firstly, I have to declare an interest that I work for the Regional Youth Charity Youth Focus North East to a basic pension and do work in Gateshead. I am not, however, a youth worker. I'll make that very clear. Obviously, there is difficulty with council funding and settlement grants. And that doesn't start on the 1st of May, whatever May was, first Thursday in May in 2010 and end on that July date in 2024. There were issues with government funding before then. There will be issues with government funding after that, and I think that's something that will exist no matter what political colour is running the country. However, that said, as a local councillor, it would be dangerous for any council group to commit to funding of levels of hundreds of thousands if that's not costed out for, and that sort of number would be needed to run decent provision. I do think that, yes, I would agree with the Liberal Democrat here, that you do need to work with providers. I do work for a charity. They are doing great work in places like Springwell and Reckington and Rowlands Gill. But they have the difficulty, like everyone else does, is that they're looking for charity money. Sometimes it's easier to get funding for things that are, what's the word I'm looking for, buildings and such like, rather than revenue funding. That's what I was looking for. And sometimes it's the revenue funding that's needed. Capital funding is all one-off cost. Revenue funding, you have to do it year after year after year after year. And it's only going to go up because people's wages go up and such like, and costs of everything goes up. So, in terms of promising anything, it's very difficult for any individual candidate to do that. But I think that in the general scheme of things, supporting the charity sector, supporting people who can come in, as the Labour representative said, it's about decision making as a councillor, and there's so much we have a statutory right as councillors to do. I say we, I'm not a councillor anymore. But councillors have a statutory duty to provide certain things, and then after that, it's what they can provide, which is non-statutory, and I do feel there is room for some new provision within that. I would have to, if I was a councillor, have to scrutinise that and have to look at whether it's able to bring value for money, whether we were doing the right things, or whether we could ask questions of the executive member or cabinet member, how we could improve that. But I think it is important we need to recognise there's only so much that the local authority can provide unless there's a huge sea change in the amount of funding local councils have, either through their central grant or through our rates. And again, with our rates, there's the pressures people don't want, like council tax, we only do 4.99%. There's only so much we can do with that, and some of that's always going to go on wages, always going to go on inflationary pressures and such like. So it's not an easy answer. Well, I'm not going to sit here and promise anything that's unbelievable. And I think the sensible people running this election won't do that either.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's just turn finally. The Greens, I read, Rachel, in a poll, around 25% of young people under 25 would vote Green if there was a national election period. And yet I couldn't find anything on your list of priorities about addressing questions for youth provision. Are you kind of missing a trick there?
I don't think so, but can I talk about when you were talking about young girls, and I don't think we were talking enough about that. So we need provision for young girls. It's maybe separate to what young boys need. We need to give girls a voice. We need to, I know that we're going to be talking about anxiety, about mental health later. We need to look about building girls' confidence. Now, obviously, I'm at a slight disadvantage because I haven't been a councillor and we haven't had any councillors in Gateshead, but we have huge vision. We recently saw that a young woman, Hannah Spencer, was elected in Manchester, but specifically from what you're asking there. We have got things in our manifesto. We want to put youth workers into schools. We want to have peer-supported initiatives for young mothers and young women, and I think that's really important, is peer initiatives, is that if we listen to young girls, and young girls that have life experience, we can match them up with other young girls. And if we need a home, we need a building, which is what Barry is, there are many amazing initiatives in Gateshead that we can tap into that maybe are outside the council control. There's voluntary libraries, there's the Wonderful Million charity that I hope I'll get a chance to talk about later, which looks at peer provision. And we need to talk about faith-based people, faith-based community working at Gateshead as well, work really, really closely with churches, the synagogue, and with mosques. So
let's just go back to Ellen. Of what you heard then, there was a mixture, really, of different levels of aspiration, but there was a lot of reliance on charitable giving and self-help. Did that reassure you?
Not particularly, because I just think it's not good enough, is it, really, to say, well, sorry, you're not that important, because we've got this hierarchy that we need to look at. So I think we need to be thinking about creative solutions here, given sort of budget constraints and challenges. I would have liked to have heard a little bit more commitment and a little bit more maybe understanding about the issues for girls and women, why it's important for them to have those safe spaces. And just, safe spaces that are there for them to socialise, sense of belonging, and also, tap into that youth work type support. And so I think we need to do better, actually.
Thank you very much. Okay, the next question is from Tamana. Tamana, are you around? Do we have Tamana here?
I think I'm asking on behalf.
Asking on her
I'm
behalf.
asking it on her behalf,
Okay.
yes. As a mother supporting a child with additional needs, in my case it's autism, I'm interested in understanding how women in my situation will get support.
Okay, so I'm going to start with you again. I won't do that every time. But there is no doubt that spending on children with special needs has provided a major challenge for local authorities. National research says spending has gone up to reach £18 billion by 2028 on children with special educational needs. Reformers Deputy Leader Richard Tice says the system has been hijacked by parents, it's out of control. His party would reform it. Your party has already suggested reforms at a national level, but in an authority like Gateshead, are you able to promise mums, like Tamana, whose question it was, that they will feel a difference in the coming years? Will there be more support?
I think as a council, what we've done for the SEND has been outstanding. We've actually put the revisions in place where it was all, we used to lose the funding, and then 90% of those cases used to come back for appeal. So what we've started to do now as a council is we just give it to every single child, and then they go through the process. We've actually got a full book, and the schools use that as a point system. So, it's not going to say, you're level 1, you're level 2, you're level 3. It's just the teachers go through that as they're assessing the children on a daily basis, rather than us as a council deciding, that child isn't qualified for the EHCP. It's then the school kind of making the decision, on they're working with them on a daily basis, rather than us taking the funding away from that child. That child is being given the funding and not being penalised. But the other thing about, it's specific on autism is the fact that I think there needs to be a massive overhaul on the way autism is diagnosed. It's all based on male values, and that's wrong. When children are being diagnosed with autism, they actually use male values for the autism for when they're diagnosing.
Which are what?
It's use male values. So when a boy is being diagnosed for autism, they get diagnosed a lot quicker, and females don't. They get left behind. So sometimes female children aren't getting diagnosed, and they're getting left way behind, and they're not getting diagnosed with autism until they're 15, 16-year-old, and they could have had the help a lot earlier. So, I'm only a Labour councillor, I can't change the world, but I do think that policy, it really needs looked at, the way they address things and the way they diagnose autism.
So we know that the bill's going up. Can the council afford it?
the provisions are being put in place for SEND, and I think Gateshead Council as a whole are doing fantastic with SEND. I mean, our chair of governors in our school that our chair of governors in, we actually get recommended. People ask to come to our school because of the SEND provision we have the star suite. And I'm not just saying it because it's my school. The SEND provision in our school is outstanding. It's absolutely fantastic. I mean, obviously you've got to give credit where it's due, and that goes to the teachers and members and staff that are working in the school. But as a council, the support that we give to them for the star suite and for the SEND is outstanding.
Okay, Barry, would you agree with the Reform leader, Richard Tice, who says this is a system that's out of control and has been hijacked by parents?
Absolutely not. 1,000% not, in fact. I'm not going to pretend that this is an issue that I'm an expert in, or such like. I can just remember in specifics, not in specifics, in more general terms, that issues with SEND are often the fact that you have to provide statutory duty, and if that statutory duty can't be done locally, it has to be done further away, and that's where the costs of local authority and taxis and charges and transport and everything. That's essentially, there needs to be a root and branch look at across the nation really about how, and it's perhaps something that the mayor will use on a higher scale than local authority maybe, how that is delivered and how that's delivered well and how that's delivered locally. I'm not entirely sure local circumstances in Gateshead. If I was on the council, if it was on health and wellbeing overview scrutiny, or if it was on specific parts which looked at that, it would be questions I'd be wanting to ask. In general, on autism assessments and such like, I might be quite critical of all parties really on this. The fact that people are waiting, I don't know the specifics of young people, I know adults, people waiting literally 3, 4, 5 years for autism assessments, and that's just not right. Something needs to be done to speed that up. It's far too slow. People are living lives with autism without that diagnosis, without their full support and such like. And I think it's absolutely vital that autism diagnosis are sped up. And if I was elected councillor, I'd do everything I could to speed up assessments. I don't know about the issue you mentioned about it being male-led. I'm happy to read up about that, but I don't know about that issue.
If you, Barry mentioned before about how many, you mentioned before about how many counsellors there are. There's going to be 66 counsellors. We're going to be fielding 60. Amongst those 60 that we've got, we have women and men who have children who are autistic. We also have a couple of candidates who are on the spectrum themselves. We have lived experience. I know we haven't been managing the council, but we do have lived experience. And I think fundamentally, we do believe in it being parent-led. What Richard Tice says is absolutely disgusting. We need to listen to parents. We need to listen to the young people as well. We need to also listen to the experts in that discipline, and not somebody like Richard Tice who just is just rubbishing what parents are saying to him. We need to talk to people who know the children as well, that, talk in education settings and doctors, and we haven't talked about the NHS, working with the NHS as well. I have a friend who's a paediatrician at the QE, and she has a child with a diagnosis of something else. And because of the time pressure that she's under, she can't look holistically at that child, and maybe some other things that are going on, which would give early diagnosis, especially for under 5s, before they've even got into a formal education system. So I just want to tell you that the Green Party, we do connect so well. We knock on doors, and I can see that some people that we've knocked on the doors here today. We're talking to everybody every weekend, trying to work out what your lived experience is, so we can represent you with that. And that includes families that have children who are living with autism, and parents who have autism as well, not just children.
Mel, talking about hard choices here. We know the bills are very high. We know the pressures on budgets are very high. How high up the priority list would children with special education needs be, and their mums?
I think that's one of the things that Barry mentioned about the cost of sending kids out of Gateshead for various treatment. There's probably another term for that. So that's one of the things that we've been very keen on locally, to try to find ways to keep kids in Gateshead, not just kids with autism or mental health problems. There's other reasons too, but that is one of the facets that we look at. I say my husband's also on the spectrum, so I know a bit about it. So I'm kind of familiar with some of the issues that people would face. I've also got a cousin who's much more autistic than that, but so it's definitely something that's I know a little bit about. I would like to be able to say that we will come in and ensure that diagnosis is faster and that treatment is faster. But at the council level, we don't necessarily have that power, although certainly the devs nationally have a lot to say about that, so I think we do have it on our radar. One of the things we would like to do, though, is to be able to pledge to have a mental health worker in every school, so that if your kids do start having issues, they can see somebody straight away instead of having to wait for ages to get proper support, because I've also been through the system where you try to get seen for a mental health issue, and I'm on a waiting list for 3 years before I can even talk to somebody, so we definitely need to do something about that. But I think that's, again, a national issue. But it's something that we would definitely be keen to do what we can at the council level to make sure that people get support sooner, and maybe not necessarily have to have a formal diagnosis before they can get support. I think that's something that we would like to be able to do. We'd have to probably look at the specific mechanism for doing that, but it's something that I think is important. You don't necessarily have to have the DSM code in order to know that you need somebody to talk to with some kind of coaching. So I think that would be something that we'd be looking into doing. And if somebody would like to speak with us afterward, we can talk more about how we can maybe develop policy going forward. That would be very welcome. So hopefully they're interested.
Okay, thank you very much. Right, we're going to move on. I'm going to ask everybody if we can make our answers as concise as possible, because we've got lots and lots of questions to get through. The next one is about being safe in public, which is a very hot topic for the audience here today. And I have Sarah to ask the question. Sarah, you? Oh, fantastic. Okay, Sarah.
Thank you. Hi. I'm not very good at speaking in mic, so...
You're excellent, actually.
Thank you. Before I ask my question, I just would like to just share my own lived experience. I arrived here as an asylum applicant in 2010, and I do have lived experience of seeking asylum, going through the system, as well as facing some challenges that people are going through, even still now in this age day. After all these challenges, I founded a charity called Peace of Mind, based in Gateshead, serving the Gateshead community. We're based in Belgium. Through that, the community work, the experience I have gained, there is a collective voice from some of the women and girls we work with. Women in our community, they have particularly refugee and asylum-seeking women and Muslim women, have shared concerns about feeling unsafe in public spaces. My question is, what steps will you take as a councillor to ensure our streets and parks are safe and welcoming for all women? So the question has come from refugee, asylum-seeking and Muslim women, but our question is to ensure all women are safe. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I will start with yet again, the Liberal Democrat 100-point manifesto. I studied this really hard. So you say that you will evaluate the use of public space protection orders as part of this process. Now, they're council orders that impose fines for various antisocial behaviour, which could include intimidating women. I found out about two in Gateshead. One covers dog fouling, and another covers issuing begging and intoxication in the town. So, what I wasn't clear of from your manifesto, do you want more of these orders? Are they effective? Could they help women feel safer? Or actually, do you think it's a waste of time? I wasn't clear from the manifesto what it was about.
I think that's sort of what the purpose of putting it in the manifesto is, actually, is to try and evaluate them. Because that's one of the things that people will say, oh, we should find people, we should, put in cameras, we should do a lot of things like that, but I don't know if it necessarily help. I think, so that was, we wanted to evaluate how well these work and come up with more solutions for things like this, because, I think particularly in Gateshead Town Centre, we hear a lot about the sort of drinking and drug taking and sort of harassment that people face. So that is part of one of the, the existing orders that people use against things like that, but also, it doesn't necessarily cover things like harassment. It doesn't cover things like making sure that parks and so on are safe.
So what are your practical steps?
Well, I think that would be, this again, one of the things that's kind of a national problem. Like, I think people who are refugees and look different in some way are obviously face a lot more harassment than the rest of us do. That's something that concerns me quite a bit. But it's a thing that we speak to people like community safety about, for example. So we had all the incidents over the last summer for all over Gateshead. I spent quite a bit of time talking to the community safety team about, and to chief executive office as well, about things that we could do to help people in the community feel safer. I've spent some time speaking with groups such as Hope Not Hate about their advice on how to handle things like racial abuse of people in the neighborhood. A lot of it was sort of to try to keep it a bit on the down low, as it were, so to not necessarily make a big deal out of things. You don't want to invite further sort of incitement, I suppose you could say. So I spent a lot of time trying to work out things like that, ways that we can improve community solidarity, so that people get to know people in the community and don't feel that they're being, they're not intimidated by someone who's different, but also that, oh, this is my neighbor, they're people that I know. So I think that's one of the things that we've been trying to work on, is to improve things that happen in the community so we do things together. Because I think trying to impose orders from above isn't necessarily going to do that much to change the situation. It needs to be a community level, reaching out to each other, learning who people are, getting to know each other is more of more practical, I guess, or more of a long-term solution would actually invite people into your space and be more inclusive. But also I think some of the issues with specific harassment is something that we need to deal more with the police with, because I think councils don't necessarily have the power to do things about them. So like specifically harassment, I'm not sure the council actually has the legal power to impose anything on it in the same way that we would get the police involved probably if there was a serious problem.
And to jump in there and to ask Barry, your pamphlets, also called Safe Streets, but again, without specifics which might make women feel more secure from the Muslim community.
Yeah, I don't know what you're referring to, but I'll take it that someone just written Safe Streets as a slogan.
Yeah.
If something's a slogan, it needs something behind it. You're absolutely right. My view in Gateshead is that we've got, I have concerns day in, day out about the town centre. I've parked my car this evening on Church Street because it was free. The building next to it is 5:30 became free. The building next to it, there's a broken glass window, and there's glass all over the path as I walk up here. I don't reckon it happened today. It's probably been there for days and days and days. And if that's the case, it's little things like that that create a menacing environment for women and girls, and for men, I'm sure as well. We have the town centre. I'm in Jackson Street quite often on an evening. If I go to the gym, it feels unsafe when I'm there. I don't feel particularly safe when I'm there. It sometimes feels isolating. And I think what I would say is that if I was on the council, if I got elected in May, and you came forward with these regeneration schemes in the town centre, the questions I would, if I was put on the planning, for example, questions that I would want to ask, and I think I would urge all of the councillors, if you get onto the planning, to ask, is what are you doing with the Section 106 money in terms of how you put...
Can you just explain what that is?
Section 106, that's money that developers pay as part of the planning game. So when there's development is approved, there's a pot of money for the public gain. How we make the street scene safer there, how we make it somewhere where it's more welcoming to walk. I think the High Street, the lower part of the High Street, is probably even more intimidating than Jackson Street. And I think that what we need to do as councillors is what powers we have, make things as safe as possible. Yes, we don't have a policing budget or things like that within the local council, but what we do have is we can make decisions on that about people's lives. And if we can make things, lights in the workplaces, opening areas where it needs to be open, walkways to public transport, so they're lit up properly, and people listen to the lived experiences of people. We should be taking on board what I'm hoping that police do liaison with people who've been victims of crime. I've got a scar on my head, so I've got glass bottle thrown at me in Newcastle. And I felt at that time I wasn't listened to. I would like to think that victims are listened to more, that their input is put in, that groups who work with victims of crime are liaised with, and that we can see, as far as I would like to see, I think both of the town centre feels safe enough at the moment. I think that all of us as councillors should be doing more to make it feel more safe and welcoming place.
Thank you. Rachel.
Hi, can I approach this at a macro and micro level? So, Sarah, I'm really sorry that the women that you work with and you are in your lives having that. And I think we haven't mentioned this, but we need to be really, really honest about the race-based violence and the gender-based violence and where that's coming from. And I blame not nobody that's here, but I do blame another party for that, for the narrative that's being repeated in the media, in newspapers, and casually, the casual racism that is just coming into more and more, and we see that everywhere, so I'm sorry about that, Sarah. But looking at this from a micro level, I think we need to make our city centres and our parks more vibrant. We need women out at night. We need women returning home from work, not just going out to play in the park. We need women to be out, and the more of us there are, the more we'll feel safe. And one of the things that we can, a practical way we can do that is by encouraging active travel. So people not going out in their cars, but using the buses, cycling, walking. Then there's more people in the town centre. And I hear what you say, Barry, the town centre doesn't feel safe, but it's not a vibrant place to go. If we can work on making it a vibrant place to go, with good youth services and exciting things happening, then there'll be more women out, and maybe then we'll start to feel safer.
Thank you. I think, based on what you just said, there's a statistic which I've read and I was rather shocked at. In Gateshead, there's been a 23.2% increase in reports of hate crimes year on year. And that's quite a terrifying number, isn't it? So,
can I quickly come back on that? Misogyny is not a hate crime, though. Yes, racism is, and it should be. Transphobia is, and it should be, but misogyny isn't, and I think that we need to look at that fundamentally.
Right, before we come to Sharon, I just want to briefly mention what Reform's National Manifesto says about being safe on the streets. It calls for more visible policing, which obviously isn't technically a local council issue, more powers to stop and search, again, not a local council issue, and increasing the number of prison places, which is a national government issue. But I couldn't find anything specifically about safety on the streets locally. Sharon, what would you like to add?
Hi, first of all, I think on behalf of everybody in this room, I'd like to start with an apology, because you should never ever be made to feel like that. Safety isn't a luxury, it's a basic right, and everyone is entitled to that basic right. As a council, we have been running a pilot scheme for the street lighting. I know my road in particular, I put myself forward for that because I live on a main drag down to a metro station, and the darkness on the night time, just in the winter when people just actually come home at tea time from work, you could barely see in front of you. The lighting was absolutely horrendous. So that pilot scheme was put in place, and my complaints from the residents have gone down threefold since those lights have been put in place. So if you want to speak to your local councillor and speak to being part of the pilot scheme to try that light system, like in your community or where there's any issues that you're having, please do speak to your local councillor, because you can be part of that pilot scheme for the new street lighting. But also, you've said for peace of mind. We've just, as a council, set up the first ever Women and Girls Committee in the North East, and I'm so proud to be the chair of that. Now, as the chair of that committee, I'd be more than welcome to invite you to come to that meeting and bring some of your community to that meeting. Speak to us, the women and girls of that committee, about any issues that you are facing, and if we can help you at all, we will help you. We are looking at policies, old and new policies that come through, new policies that come through, come to us first, and we analyse those policies to see if we think there's any changes need put in place, and we implement them changes before they go to Cabinet to be agreed. So, by all means, if you want to speak to me after this, you're more than welcome to come to one of our community meetings and speak on behalf of anybody in your community. And if there's anything we can do to help you, we certainly will.
Sarah, I hope you'll find some help in those answers and that maybe you'll take up that invitation. The next question is also about safety, and I'm going to ask you to be really quick, about 30 seconds each, otherwise we're going to run out of time. Yes, I'm not looking in any particular direction. So, the next question is from Sarah Endy. Sarah. Hi.
Hi. So, this one's about transport and leads on from what you've all been discussing, which is helpful. So, reference as a priority in Gateshead Council's commitments, safe transport is critical for women and girls, especially at night. How will you work with transport providers to ensure safer bus stops, well-lit walking routes, accessible taxis, and affordable nighttime travel options for women in Gateshead?
Thank you very much, Sarah. I just want to remind everybody that public transport is a shared responsibility with the Mayor. So, let's start with Rachel this time.
Hi.
I like public transport.
I love public transport. The more women we can get on public transport and on buses, the safer we'll be. I am chair of the public transport user group, and this comes up a lot. I'm not going to talk specifically, but obviously I've got things about better lit bus shelters, upgrading our travel hubs. But I think we also need to look at safe drop-offs. Where do our women live and where are they working? And if they're working at night, is public transport getting them home close enough to where they live? We need women in the night time working economy, so let's get them in. We also need zero tolerance, like Scotland already has on sexual harassment and gender-based violence on public transport. I think we also need to train bus drivers. They've got to safeguard us as well. And I've seen some really horrible, misogynistic, transphobic, and racist bus drivers. And we need to do something about that as well.
Here we go. Watch out, bus drivers, if you're in the audience. Okay, Barry, you next. 30 seconds, please.
A good friend of mine's a bus driver.
Bus drivers.
She sees a picture on the bus and advertising. Anyway, so I wouldn't. They do have a difficult job. I'll add that. So they don't earn, not millionaires. So I will defend them a little bit, but I get your point. I would agree that as a local councillor, what Rachel said there as well, that you need to be looking at all the micro-level stuff in terms of lighting, being in the right place, all that kind of stuff, which I kind of put in my last answer as well. So, given me to be brief, I'll not extend that too much. But yes, there is the committees. It might have changed from the time I was on a NECA committee, which didn't. This is before that's when Gateshead wasn't in it. It was when it was North, then we was NECA, then we went North at the time. And there are cross-border committees where decisions are made, and I think putting those items on those agendas of those committees is absolutely vital. Because if we just have it on prices, which is important, things like whatever, smart cars, which seems to be discussed every single meeting we went to, which is a great idea, obviously, but if we haven't got them achieved nothing, we've just discussed it. But if we can put items like that on the agenda from in those meetings, I think that's a very good idea.
Okay, thanks. Amanda? I couldn't find a transport safety pledge in your 100 pledges. Do you want to make a 101st pledge now?
Well, sure, that would be great. I would just say the Joint Transport Committee I was on before got rolled into now the Next Scrutiny Committee, but that is one of the things that I often bring up. Yeah. This is the thing that I bring up often is just transportation in general, not just safety, but part of the thing with safety, I think, is that the routes across Gateshead aren't necessarily, the bus routes in particular, aren't necessarily always well integrated. That's not something that we can do solely as a council, but we can encourage the bus companies to have a better sense of like where the buses go and what the routes are like. So similar to what Rachel was talking about. If you've got a bus that comes near where you actually want to be and you don't have to walk through a dark neighborhood at night, that would be a great start. Small things like improving the signage I think would be helpful. So for example, we go down Jackson Street, I don't know about you, I can't see what the actual bus, the Belgrade letter codes on. I have real difficulty actually seeing which bus stop I want. So that we can, it's a thing about being confident in where you're going. So I think small things like that would be useful so that, I need to go to number F, that's not at the end of the street. And I'm not looking at my phone, looking at, trying to work out where I'm going. So similar, small things like that would be useful. I think the street that Sharon is referring to is maybe one that I suggested for that particular reason, that you walk up to Peel Metro along that way, and then with the lighting previously, they asked us for streets to suggest there's like a pool of darkness between the metro station and the actual street. So they've upgraded the lighting there. There's a few other places where they're suggesting that they might upgrade the lighting. That's one of the things that we were quite keen on. We've also got, things more to do with dark skies, sort of astronomy related, but it's related because it doesn't sound like it is, but a lot of the way lights are designed right now actually make it so it's more difficult to see where you're going, which is counterintuitive because they're very bright. But so that's one of the things we have to look at is reevaluating the design of things like lighting across Gateshead to make sure that you can see where you're going at night. But I think, the actual transport pledge, we'd be delighted to do that if we have the power to do that.
Sharon, you've already mentioned the lighting that you were part of, your committee was part of sorting out. The committee also has on its list more CCTV, landscaping to cut back overhanging greenery, and better lit bus stops. Can you tell us if any of those aspirations have actually come to pass?
A lot of the cutting back of the trees has started to take place already. But like I say, no one should have to change their behaviours, their routes or anything on public transport out of fear. Obviously, the lighting thing is an issue, but what we need to do is work more closely with the transport providers. And the CCTV, I believe that, I haven't got the power to do that, but mobile cameras, we do need mobile CCTV in some places, just so women do feel safe, but like I say, you should never ever have to change your route or not use public transport out of fear.
So is there one thing that you've heard that you'd really like to happen that would make you feel happier at night?
Yes, well, actually, it's probably one thing that I haven't heard. So thank you very much for discussing kind of public transport buses, and I think buses are probably one of the easiest and most accessible ways of changing transport options for women and making it safer. One thing that you haven't covered is cycle routes. I'm a keen cyclist, and often use it as a way of reducing fees for petrol or for buses, which can be expensive, metro, etc. So just potentially also to consider the safety of cycle routes for women. Me and my partner have very, very different mindsets in terms of he's going to go out on a bike ride, and so am I, but I will think about 10 more things that he will think about, and it isn't just padding on with them. It's also things like personal safety, dark cycling routes, which again are overgrown with shrubbery, so just considering cycling routes when you're discussing things with agendas as well. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Okay, I'm going to power on because now a little bit behind time. Aisha Nazim is next up with a question on housing. Aisha.
Okay, good evening everyone. My name is Aisha. My question is, I do apologize if it seems a bit wrong, but it is all related. So what is the current situation for women with accessibility issues? Are they provided with some housing equipped with special features? And is there any transport or support available for people with mobility challenges? what would you do to improve this?
Thank you, Aisha. Just forgive me, but because we're short of time, I'm going to concentrate on the housing element of that question. There's a few little bits of background facts that you might find helpful. The North East Evidence Hub, really useful website if you want to have a look at it. It took information from the 2021 census and it said 22% of people in Gateshead said they've got a disability. It's not clear how many of those were women. The pressure on the housing system, as Beth was all about, is absolutely plain to see. The council's got a housing plan, goes up to 2055. The plan is to develop 500 new homes by 2033. One of its priorities, it says, is investment for more disabled adaptations. By 2030, the council estimates a need for an additional 90 units of supported accommodation for adults with learning disability. And an estimated 670 specialised homes are needed for older people by 2040. That's a lot of building, Sharon, and are you on track?
Well, the new estate is being started now, just at Gateshead there. But going to answer your question, the disability in housing, it's about dignity and equality, and I believe that you are the people who have faced those barriers on a daily basis, so maybe you should speak up and discuss some of the barriers that you faced and maybe be involved in some of the decision making. You know, because we can, as a council, we can turn up and we can put ramps in, we can put disability aids in, things like that. But as a disabled person, you're the person who's facing their barriers. So if you discuss it with us, you could possibly be involved with the decision making for the housing situation.
Yeah, definitely I would like to, if I'm given the opportunity.
Yeah, but I'll speak to you after this meeting if you would like.
Okay. I mean, that is great to hear, but your own reports, you kind of set out how much more is required, and I just wonder where the planning is for all of that and what your long-term strategy is and where you're locating houses with disability access, for example. Is it something that is on the regular agenda for the local authority?
The housing, I think it's a basic, I would say, weekly topic. It's discussed in our groups on a constant, and it's also discussed in the Health and Wellbeing Board as well. We've restructured the Health and Wellbeing Board to include a lot of things for the disability, like on the housing side of things. So, yeah, it's something that's discussed constantly.
Okay. So, one of the things that I found out is that there's still going to be about 90 houses sold by the council next year under the Right to Buy scheme, and 75 after that. Given the numbers of houses that we've just heard that people need, including houses for people with disabilities, is that something you still support, right, the Right to Buy?
I think I'd be a hypocrite if I didn't, because my parents bought their house and the Right to Buy in the 1980s. So, however, it is a different age. I appreciate that, and I appreciate that in that policy there were good points for people and there were bad points for people. It's however quite a long time ago now, but I do still support it, perhaps with some limitations that I want to have a look at. I do take the view that I'm not going to stand for national elections anymore. I did that in 2010 when I was young and naive and realised it wasn't for me. Local politics is where I want to see things where I can make a difference. In terms of housing, I think when you become a councillor, you get your casework to you, and there'll be individual issues where you as a local councillor need to be on board in terms of asking questions if there are problems. I don't know enough about Gateshead's situation in terms of their housing list and things like that, and allocating of houses. It's certainly something I would scrutinise as a local councillor. And if there were issues that needed sorting, and if there was injustice in that, we would try and my best to raise those issues. So I've done that as a local councillor in Northumberland, and I will continue to do that. I probably had the most social, certainly until 2017 anyway, I had most social housing as a Conservative councillor in Northumberland when I was a local councillor. Most of my Conservative colleagues had wards which were largely owner-occupied wards, but I did work cross-party with other councillors in terms of issues from that point, and I would always want to do that if I was elected councillor.
Amanda, specifically on the issue of provision for people with disability, women with disability, is there anything specific that you can say to that?
Well, I think we didn't break it down to women versus disability in general. We do have one of our many points in the manifesto that is about reevaluating how quickly the council deals with accessibility cases, so everything from drop curbs to actually adapted houses. So it's something that I think we need to be a bit faster on as a council. So that's definitely something that we would be looking to do, because I had, a few cases where someone's clearly needs something, but it takes a very long time to get the wheels turning to make it happen. Everybody wants it to happen, but it takes ages, so that's something we would definitely like to be able to look at. And also just generally need more houses, so we want more houses more quickly, which frees up some of the houses sort of up the chain, hopefully. That's the thing that we try to push on. So,
okay. Because we should time, I'm going to push on, so thank you. I just want to point out reforms policy just before we finally come back. So the party has pledged to change social housing laws within its first 100 days of a new parliament were it to be elected, but it would obviously have knock-on effects for local authorities. There would be a UK connection test implementing a strict requirement where foreign nationals are concerned, so that they would be, quotes, moved to the back of the queue. There would also be a local residency requirement, so there's a proposal for a 10-year residency rule requiring applicants to have lived in a borough for a decade before they can join a social housing waiting list. So that's Reform UK's policy. Do you want to?
Well,
don't have to answer that.
No.
Please say how you would respond.
Well, it won't surprise you to know that the Green Party is the party of social housing. We really, really firmly, we wouldn't sell any more stock. We in Lewes and Mid Suffolk, where we have control, we've got hundreds of homes, we've upgraded thousands more, and they're all kept under council ownership. And if you've got council and public ownership, you don't have any shareholders in the chain, and you can put rent controls in, you can abolish leaseholds, which means that if you've got a building that is owned by a lease, and you've got rid of that, then it's the people who live in the building then, and they can work together to make things more accessible. But first of all, if we're building more, we have to build in good design, and if you've got just good design for disabled women, that benefits everyone, especially as this ageing population that we've got in Gateshead.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. So, we've got about 13 minutes left and 3 questions. We're not going to manage that. So we will get to it if you're all to the point. So, Karen, Douglas, where's Karen?
Yeah.
Great.
Right, well, my question relates to waiting times for mental health advice and support for young women and girls. What measures would you put in place to reduce waiting times for mental health support and ensure those who need it receive professional support as soon as possible?
Thank you very much. Amanda.
I think that's where our hope to have mental health professionals in schools probably comes into it partly. Some of that I think maybe out of our hands as a council, but it's definitely something we would like to be able to, I think as I said previously, it's terrible to want to see somebody and have to wait for ages, so we would, suppose we could work with them, just the ICE and other commissioning services to try and ensure that we get actual services commissioned that can help people quickly. I know there was an adult peer mental health support that sadly ended recently, so we would hope to support outlets like that to get people actually where you live and get people the help they need, like sort of now, not 3 years from now. Sorry.
Sharon, I think I'm right in saying that there is a pledge to have a mental health worker in every school, which the Labour Party has said it has its ambition. Will we be able to achieve that in Gateshead?
I would like to think so. Like say similar to what Amanda was talking about. We lost a really good mental health service just lately, and through no fault of our own as a council, we actually fought as hard as we could to keep that. The two girls in particular actually went on to set up on themselves, and they're doing a lot of work in the community, and they're working with a lot of the voluntary groups in the sector as well. We have like a drug rehabilitation service, and the girls are in and out of there working with them. So I would like to think that as a council we can work towards getting one in every single school, because if caught early enough, it doesn't lead on to later issues in life. And at the end of the day, our children in the schools need as much support as they can.
Thank you.
I think we need to look at this at a micro level, sorry, a macro level as well, come back to the fundamentals about where girls are anxious, where girls have mental health issues. We need to give them a voice, and we need to make them more confident. And we know that there's a BBC programme this week about how girls are still feeling overwhelmed by boys in the classroom, even though they've got fantastic academic achievements compared to boys. They're not talking out in the classroom. They're not taking up space in the playground. And I think we need to look fundamentally about what's causing young women's anxiety and young women's mental health issues. But I'll support anything that, if I do get into council, my colleagues have talked about here, because I do think that Gateshead Council is fundamentally run really well by my colleagues here already.
Thank you very much. I'm going to summarise Reform UK's policy on mental health, which was set out by their spokesman Lee Anderson on BBC back in the last year, who would stop people with anxiety disorders from claiming personal independence payments, PIPs. Now, that's not a local authority thing, but it is a gateway to a passport to lots of local authority support if you have a PIP. So Reform said its plans would save £9 billion each year by 2029. Mr Anderson said the government should not be labelling young people disabled because they have the odd bout of anxiety. And listing some of the symptoms of anxiety and depression, he asked, who in this room has not suffered these? Barry, I'm certainly not asking you to respond to the Reform policy, but I wonder if you could tell me what the Conservative policy would be to support young people's mental health, particularly young girls.
Well, I'm not detailed enough about our national policy. I assume we'd probably be working on a national policy, working forward to the next general election. So I trust they'll come up with a decent policy. What I would suggest is that, you've mentioned Reform policies there, increasingly sees easy slogans and easy targets and easy £9 billion to just do this, because they're absolute rubbish. Because if you take something away from that, you've just got to spend it somewhere else. Because the issue hasn't gone away as an issue. To be dealt with, it's a side issue. It just sickens me when people can just throw numbers off like that, and it's just it's unfair on anyone really. It's unfair on us as public to have to listen to sound bites like that, because it's just so simplistic that it's untrue. I probably avoided answering a question over my head. But no, as a local councillor, obviously there's only so much you can do within that, but I've lost my phrase slightly.
Well, I'll save you the effort and move on to the next question. I'm sorry I've got time to come back, but I do want to get this last question in, which is from Fuzia. Is Fuzia here? Fantastic. Okay, Fuzia. Fire away.
I'll be really quick.
Good.
Can you hear me? Yeah. Marginalised women get put on the back burner for everything, especially funding and provision of safe spaces. There is nothing funded substantially in Gateshead. I know this as I have been running the Women's Wellbeing Cafe. in a very deprived area, which some of you have visited. And my project is running on a shoestring amount which will be exhausted soon. What can you do to make changes that includes women like me?
Just before we get an answer from each member of our panel for the year, can you tell us what will happen if your funding runs out?
Well, I was working with a team called Gateshead Community Bridge Builders, and my contract came to an end on the 31st of March. But I've been continuing the group on a voluntary basis because I don't want to abandon them. There was a little bit of funding left for me to carry that on, and I was very lucky to receive a little bit of funding from Gateshead Council, which will see us through to June. But if that does finish, then it's going to actually, it's not going to carry on, is it? And the funding landscape at the moment is just so competitive. It's, it's not a constituted group, it's just a voluntary group. I'm working without any pay at the moment because I'm so invested. I worked really hard for 3 years, to actually work with these ladies. And it's phenomenal. I mean, some of you in this room have visited the group, and I think I'm biased that we've done something really great. We do things around nutrition, exercise, and well-being, and I work with a wonderful young chef who teaches us how to cook healthily, and it's about health inequalities. Obviously, that's the women's health agenda is a topic at the moment, and what's happening with marginalised women. And I know that we haven't got time at the moment, but the data shows us that the disparities are starkly really different when you talk about marginalised women.
That's a heartbreaking story. Thank you very much for telling us. I'm just going to go on the panel. What can you do to help?
Well, first off, hats off to you for doing what you do, and it does not go unappreciated. Grassroots community groups are the backbone of our community, and you people like yourself are the backbone and the beating heart of the community. So we need to do more to prioritise marginalised groups and help to fund and help you to apply for grants wherever we can. So if you need any help with things like that, please do speak up and come forward, because we will help you as much as we can.
Thank you so much. And I do really appreciate that, and you have actually said that to other people as well. One of the things that I have noticed is that marginalised women like me don't really get to sit at decision-making tables. And when you look at boards, there is not any representation. So where decisions are being made, that's what needs to change. I mean, you mentioned the Health and Wellbeing Board. I don't know this, but what is the representation? Is there anybody who looks like me on that Health and Wellbeing Board for Gateshead? I have asked this question before and I didn't really get an answer. So that's what really needs to change.
So again, I'll extend the invite to you, and I'd like to invite you to the Women and Girls Committee, so you can come and speak to us personally, and any issues you are having, discuss them, and we will take things forward, because at the end of the day, you're a woman and we're here to fight for you. Thank you.
So I just have to acknowledge that we know that women always have to work harder, and marginalised women have to work harder as well to get to be heard and just to live and just to work. And I'm not going to name names, but there is somebody in the room that I have tried to persuade to be a Green Party candidate who's of colour. And come stand with us. But just to let you know, we've got the most amazing, broad, I know as this white woman you can see that, but we have got a really broad, diverse range of candidates standing, including people of colour and women from age 18 to 78.
We're in competition now to try and persuade you to come along. But I know, Fasir knows I was quite upset when Gateshead Community Bridge lost their funding because they've done so much amazing stuff with a number of their events. with some of the other groups around town as well, that do, just like really nice things. And I think that one of the things that we hope to do is kind of consult or streamline, I suppose is a better word, the council's grant. We look for grants basically and try and free up capacity to help the professionals, help community groups look for more funding. So that's one of the things. It's always about trying to find funding. I know I've tried to look for sources for things like that, but I don't. I'm an archaeologist. I don't know anything about fundraising, so it's been a bit difficult as a personal level to try and find things. But it's something as a council we'd definitely like to be able to help support community groups find more funding, because there's little bits of funding everywhere. It's just finding the right people and connecting them together. So it's definitely something that we would like to support community groups in doing as much as we can.
Thanks. Barry?
Yeah, I think if I was your local ward councillor, I'd probably be knocking on the door with the cabinet member, cabinet member to see what could be achieved on that. I do probably think you probably do need to be constituted, because it's probably going to open more opportunities for funding. But certainly, from my experience, it's the sort of thing that I would be knocking on doors. I would be wanting to work with you and see what would happen if I was on the council, and particularly if I was your representative. On another note, I was the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board in Northumberland for 18 months, I think. And if I was chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board in Gateshead, I'd happily invite you to it. I don't suspect I will be, but I would happily invite you if I was.
Okay, so we've now slightly run over time, so this is going to be one-word answers, which is easy. Are you going to be able to sign up to the million women that pledged, which, as you can see, where you came is on board? We'll go from this end first. Barry, yes or no?
Yes.
Thank you. Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes. I think you already have, actually. That's it, just about. A few really important points. Number one, remember to vote on May the 7th. There are lots of reasons why you should, and you might think it's not worth your while, but in the course of my extensive research, I discovered that there's one person on the platform tonight involved in an election where the outcome was decided by just 2 votes. So that just goes to prove that that just proves that every vote counts. Please do remember to make yours count on May the 7th. Go safely, and thank you very much.
I just want to say a huge thank you to all of you for coming out tonight. Thanks to our wonderful chair, Jackie, for steering us through these important issues. Thank you to each of the candidates for actually showing up and representing parties. Thank you very much for that. I want to say a big thank you to all of you who asked questions, and I would say you're so articulate. I hope you're up here next time. But I want to say thank you, and I think deserve a round of applause. And most of all, I want to say a big thank you on behalf of 1 Million Women and Girls to everybody who came out. It's so great to see so many women here caring and showing up and supporting these events. Round of applause. If you are interested, we're hoping to do some group photographs together. We have some group photographs with the councillors here. Also, safety first, there's going to be a group of us that are going up to Gateshead Metro later, so if you'd like to walk up with us together, just come and see us at the desk. So safe travels everyone, and thanks again for coming. Thank you.
Hi everyone.